Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. A huge thanks to Terry Gross for opening up for us.
Totally.
With fresh air for the first time.
And Sadie Smith.
And Sadie Smith, yes. Tuning into this show for the first time due to the format change. First, thank you for sticking with us. And second, a little bit about this show. As the name The Fabulous 413 suggests, we're focusing on happenings here in Western Mass. I like to say that it's sort of a Mr. Rogers neighborhood for grown-ups, introducing you to the interesting people and places that make up our 413 neighborhood.
And today we even have puppets coming to the land of make-believe, which we call Ashfield. But more on that in a minute. Later in the show, we'll take a look at the Mattoon Street neighborhood of Springfield, and we'll hear about the half-century-old arts festival that will once again be happening on Mattoon Street this weekend.
But as promised, puppets, or at least one. Little Amal is the giant 12-foot puppet representing a 10-year-old Syrian refugee child at the heart of an art experience called The Walk. Little Amal has become a global symbol of human rights, especially the rights of refugees.
Since July of 2021, Little Amal has traveled over 6,000 miles to 97 towns and cities in 15 countries and has been welcomed by more than 1 million people on the streets, including hundreds of artists and civil society and faith leaders, as well as tens of millions online.
Her journeys are festivals of art and hope that draw attention to the huge number of children fleeing war, violence, and persecution, each with their own story. Her message to the world is don't forget about us.
Between this Thursday, September 7th, and November 5th of this year, Amal will journey 6,000 miles across the United States, visiting more than 35 towns and cities, starting in Boston and making her way to San Diego. 1,000+ artists and arts organizations will create over 100 free public events to welcome her.
And one of the very first here in the U.S. will be in Ashfield, Massachusetts, where Little Amal will be hosted by Double Edge Theater and the Ohketeau Cultural Center. And joining us from Double Edge is Carlos Uriona, and from Ohketeau, Larry Spotted Crow Mann. Thank you both very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Welcome to the studio here. So the artistic body behind Little Amal is The Walk Productions, and it's an association with Handspring Puppet Company. Carlos, do you want to talk about what that theater company is all about?
I think, and I started this relationship fairly recently because of they choosing us to be one of the stops, which was an honor. It started with this idea of this puppet, and there are in Europe 4 or 5, maybe 6 companies that produce this type of mechanic puppets that are so big, large, manipulated by 3-4 tech people, and there are larger also. This particular one is I think it was emblematic. And when they talked to me, I immediately thought the person that talked to us was somebody that had already collaborated with Double Edge and Ohketeau in the early stages of Ohketeau, Jamie Bennett, who now lives in Montreal. And he said, I thought it was a good idea because it's about displaced people, and there's a lot of meaning about that. And why don't you talk to Larry and see if they're interested? Ohketeau is interested in this because of all the connotations that are about violence and displacement of people. So I thought it was a great idea, but I need to consult. So I talked to Larry, or Stacy talked to Larry.
Yeah. And Double Edge Theater, I mean, even the name says quite a bit about what you do, and we can get into that a little bit more. But if people aren't familiar with Ohketeau, we have had many guests on over the course of the very brief history of this show, including
a whole 6 months old
Rhonda Anderson and Tamantha Sylvester, who we just had on talking about the removal of the quote-unquote Big Indian statue just a couple weeks ago. But Larry Spotted Crow Mann, for those who aren't familiar with Ohketeau, what is Ohketeau?
Kwai, Niwachi, I am the Hognanawak. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Ohketeau means a place to plant and grow. It's in my Nipmuc language. It is the first and only indigenous run and operated cultural center in all of Western and Central Mass. It's a plate of art, culture, education, wellness, place-based learning. We have residencies. We have artists in residence. We do a multitude of programming for our indigenous community and also for the public to educate in indigenous pedagogy. And on and on. And we have so many amazing things that we just keep doing because we are 4 years young, and it's been such a need for such a place, and we're finding so many opportunities to uplift and share and to bring a platform to artistic expression to so many artists. And that's one thing I'll just mention real quick in terms of the Amal, how much I really enjoy the honor of hosting Amal, because sharing such an important message through artistic expression is part and parcel of what we do at Ohketeau, and having a powerful message that's talking about something so meaningful and needed throughout the world is a big, important issue.
We're speaking with Larry Spotted Crow Mann from Ohketeau and Carlos Uriona from Double Edge Theater, who are welcoming Little Amal, a 12-foot puppet, to downtown Ashfield this Saturday in the town common, 12:30 to 1:30. There's another company, Carlos, that is also helping to co-produce this particular event in Ashfield that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, this visit then, when we started the conversations, we were mentioning to them that we were having this convening of about 50 artists from all over the country. The convening is also co-produced with another partner of Double Edge Theater, like Ohketeau's Jupiter Performance Studio, which is mostly based in Harlem, New York. And maybe if you recall, they presented something like a work in progress in the name of the Mother Tree that is going to be presented at the Apollo Theater.
Amazing.
And it was co-produced with Double Edge and the National Black Theater. Jupiter Performance Studios, particularly Ebony Noel Golden, the director, curated this convening that we call Art and Survival, and this is the 4th edition. Art and Survival started as a gathering of artists thinking about art and survival. This year, the emphasis will be in the environment and healing, and the power of healing, which intertwines perfectly well with, in my opinion, with the message, the approach that the walk production has with Little Amal. Little Amal is a beautiful, again, in my opinion, what I always think is that if we can, as artists, somehow remove ourselves from the words and from the oral discourse a little bit, you need some of them, but in this case, like Little Amal, its sheer presence, surrounded by people. I have goosebumps as thinking about this, because you don't need to say anything else. I mean, this is a girl, which they're making like a zoom lens on her, and that's all you need to understand the violence of war, the displacement of people. So when we told them that Jupiter Performance Studio was doing this, they thought it was a really good confluence. Mm-hmm. Is that an English word?
Yes.
Or am I talking Spanish? I just said right from Argentina, so I'm still trying to go back and forth.
I know it's difficult.
Well, one of the cool things about looking at the site with Little Amal and her previous visits is, like you said, taking some of that context away, or some of that barrier between what she's doing and the people away, because when she makes a visit, it's not a big grand thing. What she's doing are simple actions. She's walking, she's sleeping, she's gathering flowers. It's the humanity of those small, simple things, and understanding how short the distance really is between you and her situation. And I think her visit here is really interesting because it sort of touches on a confluence of the nature of refugees and where those refugees are, including refugees in place. But that's a larger conversation that we get to have on Saturday when she makes her visit.
Yeah.
We're speaking with Carlos Uriona from Double Edge Theater and Larry Spotted Crow Mann from Ohketeau, also in Ashfield. Ashfield will be where Little Amal will be coming this Saturday, 12:30 to 1:30, one of many stops across the country, one of the first in this country. I want to hear a little bit more from Carlos and from Larry about how the notion of displacement is part of the missions that both of your organizations have dealt with, and how this could potentially, this giant puppet could be a piece of the puzzle of using art to heal those messages. More with Larry Spotted Crow Mann and Carlos Uriona coming up in just a little bit.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Clee Smith.
We're here with Larry Spotted Crow Mann from Ohketeau Cultural Center and Carlos Uriona from Double Edge Theater, both in Ashfield, two of the organizations that are welcoming a giant 12-foot puppet that represents the refugee crisis across the globe to the 413, to Ashfield. I should also mention there'll be a mass mocha on Sunday as well with Little Amal. And Carlos...
Each visit is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So if you go to both of them, you'll see something a little bit different about Amal's life and her journey. So you can make plans in that way, too.
This is what amounts to a form of street theater, and I know Double Edge is part of their mission for many years has incorporated elements of street theater, largely because of you, and revolutionary theater in regards to being displaced, as you, Carlos, as a young man, were in Argentina and were, forced to flee a regime and use theater and the power of art to survive through that. Talk about how Little Amal's puppetry resonates with you as an artist and with Double Edge.
Well, before my experience, my grandfather, my great-grandfather were also displaced. And some of them were killed young, at 25, 28, for resisting oppression, particularly during, at the same time that here was happening the Bread and Roses movements,
Right.
and the movements in Argentina was happening the same thing in factories, and particularly with people that were displaced from Albania, North Africa, like my family, and they came as workers, and then they tried to get into unions. And the dark story of one of my grandparents is that he was killed in one of those actions. That was something that the family never sort of overcame. And then when the next repression came up, there were several, but the last one that I was there came, I was involved already in movements. My thinking at the time was that a way, and this is something that is also related to art and survival and what Ebony is curating. The creativity is a way of confronting these injustices. I don't think, or early enough, and I still believe that at my almost 67 years, I don't think that the whole political thing or even a warfare would really make a transformation, but creativity and imagination can, and the understanding what is our truth as people. That's what could create conditions to transform injustice or to bring justice back. So I used that in the streets since I was telling my grandchildren in this trip that I used to do invisible theater, which is a theater that happens but is not announced, and it happens in a subway, right? We used to celebrate or make believe that it was a wedding that failed, and then a priest in the subway, but nobody knew anything, and we would go stop by 9 stops, and then disappear immediately. So we weren't disappear for real. So that was, for instance, something I did, and I think that that they're doing with Little Amal is magnificent. Another incredible action, direct action, which I think it's creative and imaginative direct action that helps us all at least foresee or intuit, more than foresee, a possibility. Because when we don't see possibilities is when we become we develop an anger that is against ourselves.
And the imaginative nature of this being a puppet, it opens up a whole different realm of thought in regards to viewing humanity.
Yeah.
It is essentially non-human, but it is a giant 12-foot, gorgeous-looking puppet of a little girl that can't but make you think about the plight of an actual little girl or another little person or somebody somewhere who's been forced out of their home.
And frankly, extra human, because there are so many humans who go into making her journey work.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much humanity just crammed in making Amal. So
We're speaking about the visit of Little Amal to downtown Ashfield this Saturday with Carlos Uriona from Double Edge Theater and Larry Spotted Crow Mann from Ohketeau Cultural Center. Larry, from your perspective, talk about why the mission of Little Amal is important.
I think it has a very profound resonance with me because when we think about Little Amal, and I think there's I don't want to call it a backstory, but another story, another narrative that's taking place at the same time. Because I think it's so appropriate to have the first peoples of this land to be there to welcoming her, and you know, we have a shared and lived experience of Little Amal and so many refugees, and it brings up that dialogue of removal and Native peoples who've experienced removal. And, you know, she's a little girl, and we've had thousands and thousands upon thousands of Native children stolen from their homes. This country has yet to acknowledge that in a very wholesome way to deal with those issues. So it really, it's important to have this conversation about who gets to say who belongs here and who has the say over who gets to stay here, and on all these conversations where indigenous people, the First Nations, are not part of that conversation of immigration. I think when those conversations take place and indigenous peoples are not at the table, that conversation lacks integrity because you have one group of immigrants telling another group of immigrants they can't be here. So it's very troubling, and also that the fact that these are ongoing issues of displacement, of removal, of unresolved trauma that's going on in this country. And so welcoming Amal, I think it helps me as an indigenous person of this land, of this area that we're speaking on now, where the bones of my ancestors have been here for thousands of years, and be able to welcome her in a way that my ancestors would have wanted it to happen, and someone who's been displaced and have that shared and lived experience to acknowledge that. But then also, I think the big takeaway for me is that as Carlos was talking about, the artistic expression of this, seeing this life-size, bigger-than-life child, whereas the pain is bigger than life that has been experienced by so many. So, okay, we're going to come and we're going to see this amazing artistic expression of the puppet, and so where do we go from there, right? So what I'd like to see is how folks can take action to help start talking about that dialogue, about the displacement, the crisis of people who are homeless, right? The immigration crisis, and how we can work together to help affect change to help deal with a lot of these issues that have been gone unnoticed by so many. Because I mean, when it's brown people, usually we don't see it, and that's just an unfortunate fact around the world. Right here in our country, in different places around the world, when it's a brown face, it's not always noticed. So. It's very important that, you know, through my artistic expression, and we see these things that are, you know, we have to get a giant puppet so they can see us. So we're going to keep doing that.
As I have mentioned before, we as Americans, as a new nation, are not particularly good at subtlety. So, like, you do really have to have something like 3 times as big as a normal human being to make them actually go, oh, wait a minute, I get it now.
Yes.
And the refugee crisis is here. I mean, we did a segment earlier about the Haitian refugees living in a hotel off of the Greenfield Rotary. So this is something that we are dealing with here in Western Massachusetts right now. Governor Maura Healey has declared this a crisis, and Little Amal is an artistic way to speak to those issues.
Yeah, and when I was hearing Larry, I was remembering our first conversations when we started dreaming this collaboration. One of the things
between Double Edge and Ohketeau.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. In case you're just tuning in.
No, right. I thought you were there already listening. But it's okay. Yeah. Some of you did, some of you didn't.
Yeah.
So we one of the things that really called my attention when we talked the first time was that you, Larry Spotted Croman, sitting in front of me, what you said is that we need to have a cultural center, and that was like, right, like, because we went, well, how can we collaborate? What do you need? What can we do? So, do you need a library? Do you need? You were like, no. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes, and I said we need a place to uplift artists and the voices of other people who've been silenced. I mean, I've been a artist all my adult life, 30 years and plus. So, and I can tell the starving artist is real. So, and I know as an artist of color, the roadblocks and the obstacles and all the hoops I had to jump to get my voice out there. Where I'm writing books where a non-native person can write it, and they're getting accolades, and they're in the New York Times, and I'm writing the stuff from a first-person experience, and I'm just kind of turtling along, and so it's real. So I said, by me having this platform, I get to do for others what couldn't happen for myself being, coming up in the 80s and 90s. So it's exciting to be able to do this work and say, yeah, here you are. Here's your platform. Here's your voice. Like, do your thing.
Apart from Little Amal happening this Saturday in Ashfield that is being welcomed by Double Edge and Ohketeau, what's coming up, Larry Spotted Croman, with Ohketeau in maybe this fall?
Oh, yeah. We have so many wonderful things coming up. We've actually just finished up a full-length documentary entitled Anoki. And it's done by a filmmaker, Mayoki Films from France. I don't know if I have time to get into the whole premise of the story here.
Sure, please do.
So the story is based on actually one of my children, who he's an adult now, and the story follows his life from a child growing up on the Powwow Trail and showing all the difficulties of growing up as a Native American here in southern New England. And the story gets into the difficulties that he's experienced and how culture, community, and the Ohketeau Cultural Center kind of helped bring him back. And it's a really phenomenal story because if anybody's seen my book, The Morning Road to Thanksgiving, that's him on the cover when he was 10 years old. And he captured, the filmmaker who, the person who took the photo 15 years ago is the same person doing the film now.
Wow.
So it's kind of like she followed his whole life, and so it's a really phenomenal experience to have her come back to do this film with him. And it was all shot on location, mostly at Ohketeau, and with the help of the Double Edge folks. So we're really excited to do that first screening.
When will that be?
October 11th.
All right.
October 11th. Oh, shit.
You got the two words, probably.
Sometime in October is probably plenty. We'll Google it.
Yeah.
Dates is not for.
There's a website you should maybe check
Yes.
for both of these
Yeah,
things.
go to ohketeau.org.
There you go.
What about you, Carlos and Double Edge? You've just come off your summer spectacle, which Khalees and I went to and did for this show here, which was fantastic. The hidden territories of the Bacchae. What's coming up next for Double Edge Theater?
So after this convening Art and Survival this week, which includes this Little Amal presentation, we will be co-presenting Enoki, and then we will be presenting in November. It's not premiering, but it's like a second premiere of Lightning, directed by Jeremy Louis Eaton, with a full cast of the young Double Edge, and this Jeremy's first directing project. That's going to be pretty much it, and also we have Living Presence.
Yes, we have Living Presence. And
What's Living Presence?
Living Presence is our educational series that we share things about cultural appropriation, art, Native authors. We talk about mascot issue, all the major issues that our Indigenous people are confronting around education, Natives in STEM, and we really confront those topics with an array of Native scholars and non-Native scholars. We have a panel hosted by Rhonda Anderson, and we really dive deep. And you can see all those past Living Presence on ohketeau.org. And also, I'm really excited to say, amongst my books, I have a new book coming out soon. It's going to be my first children's book for early education, so I'm really excited about that. There's been a real call for children's literacy around Indigenous education. Just to share some numbers with you, there are only 1% on the market of children's books that represent indigenous peoples. 1%. And there are about 15 to 20% of trucks and dinosaurs. And then for books reflecting the white audience is about 70%.
Yeah.
And I believe black audience is about 20%. So these numbers are really staggering. So I really wanted to start getting our children to be able to see themselves in the stories. And this book is entitled The Adventures of Ohketeau, which is also another one of my sons I'm using for a story. So my kids come in handy for my artwork. So.
Mine have two over the
It's
years.
smaller for like having also just written a children's book. It's smaller for the black population. There's still more books about like animals than there are about black people.
Yes.
It's really astonishing, yes.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to change that.
We're working on
Yeah.
it. It's a work in progress.
Yes, absolutely.
And perhaps that's why we need to see the humanity a little more in each other, even if it takes the assistance of something like a giant puppet, like Little Amal, who will be coming to Ashfield this Saturday between 12:30 and 1:30. Carlos Uriona from Double Edge Theater, what do you hope somebody who leaves this convening of folks on the streets of downtown Ashfield with this giant 12-foot puppet, what do you hope people will leave with after this Saturday's visit?
I really hope that there is more generalized introspection and reflection inside more than talking outwards, and that leads to more action. Like we have this hotel with new neighbors in Greenfield. What can we do? What can you do? It doesn't need to be a massive, dream. It can be just, maybe helping two of the families or even one of the families with their kids going to school. And how can we help them establish themselves here in this, they're living through trauma and catastrophe. So that's my hope about doing these things. And also to see that there is a possibility to help somebody, because this giant girl represents a girl that is probably now, today, living in a tent somewhere between France and Greece, in any of those countries. There are camps and camps of people with little kids. They don't have a home. They're in a foreign country. They don't even know the language. And here they are. So here we have, now is our new reality in Western Mass, and what can we do? That's what I hope. And for everybody, I want to tell you, it's not at Double Edge Theater.
Right.
We are going to get together at the Commons where the town hall is. And that's where Ohketeau, Larry, will welcome Little Amal.
And Larry, what do you hope people will walk away with on Saturday?
I hope folks walk away with a plan to take action steps to affect change. And I'm really excited about who may show up, that we can collaborate and kind of circle an idea around how we can do things better, make things better for our community, for people who are suffering. We have the capability. We just need to have the willingness and I want folks to feel that they are empowered. We all can do something. It's not always just donation. It's people have leverage. People know people. People know people who know people. And there's many different facets of opportunity to help in just, changing the perspective about when somebody says things like, well, those people, that even a phrase like that, you could shift the conversation and say, wait a minute, what do you mean those people? Remember, our ancestors came, at some point. So, you have to, think about, your journey coming here and things like that. And think about the indigenous people who are still here and, amongst this land. And so kind of bringing all that together and come up with a plan to make change, because as Carlos mentioned, and I think that's the purpose of our art, our poetry, our music, and our writings, to really get people to think and make some, powerful changes that can happen. And one thing I say often is that most of the things through history that happen that are beneficial for humanity did not happen through legislation. They didn't happen in any kind of government building. They happened from people coming together and compelling the government to do these kind of things. And so that's what I think about, that citizens just coming together and say, hey, no, this is wrong. Maybe we should try it this way. So, yeah.
Larry Spotted Crow Mann from Ohketeau Cultural Center and Carlos Uriona from Double Edge Theater, both in Ashfield, two of the organizations that will be welcoming the not-so-little 12-foot puppet, Little Amal, to downtown Ashfield on the Commons there at 12:30 on Saturday. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Thank you.
Thank you,
for having
Kalis.
us. Thank you, Kalis.
On the way, we gear up for an arts festival in downtown Springfield that's celebrating 50 years of gathering artisans of all types from around the area and bringing them together on Mattoon Street this very weekend.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Police shots, what's up with that? Identities,
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. This Saturday and Sunday, September 9th and 10th in Springfield, is the 50th anniversary of the Mattoon Street Arts Festival. Over 90 exhibitors, food vendors, and strolling musicians joining us to tell us about this neighborhood festival are organizers Jason Alves, Bob McCarroll, and Freya Bromwich. Bromwich? You were the only one I didn't get to ask beforehand, Freya. So, yeah.
Freya Bromwich.
Bromwich. Nice.
Yes, say all of the letters.
Yes, Bromwich it is.
There we go.
So this Mattoon Street, let's go.
It's in my neighborhood. I love, just figured this out, where it is exactly. So I'm in McKnight, but where this is maybe about 5 blocks from my house. I can totally walk. I'm psyched.
But if you're not familiar with the geography of Springfield, Jason, who is an associate professor of computer information technology at STIC, who reached out to us about this excellent thing, tell us about Mattoon Street and where it is.
So Mattoon Street is located in downtown Springfield. It is a series of essentially what people call row houses, but it has the feel of downtown Boston or maybe Brooklyn. It's a number of Victorian buildings that were built out during the late 19th century.
When I hear row houses, I think of one thing, but these to me look like brownstones.
Yeah.
Which I guess are
Brownstones are a
technically
type of row
houses,
house.
but
Yes.
the row houses where I live in Turner's Falls cost a lot less than a brownstone in Brooklyn.
So think of like the South End in Boston
Yeah.
or
like Back Bay.
Back Bay,
Yeah.
exactly, right, exactly.
So it's a really cute, fun little neighborhood. It's not far from the museums, right?
It's right
Springfield
behind
Museums.
there.
Yeah. And 50 years this art festival has been going on. Bob McCarroll, I understand you're sort of the historian amongst us here. Tell us how this art festival started in a neighborhood in Springfield.
Well, 50 years ago, Mattoon Street was deteriorated and frumpy, and there were people interested in restoring the area, and they had some bought houses to invest in, some bought houses to fix in, and there were folks back then that decided that an arts festival would be a nifty way to attract people to the neighborhood so they could realize the potential of this neighborhood, because it is unique in Western Massachusetts. You will not find another street lined with what I'm going to call designer row houses. You know? Yeah.
I like that. It's all about the marketing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Row houses are their own thing from city to city,
Yeah,
frankly.
they certainly can be. But if
Yeah.
you call them brownstones, people can charge an extra $1 million or something
Oh,
for them.
Lord.
So we just talked with folks from Ashfield about how they're trying to bring art and have been bringing art to downtown Ashfield and how transformative that is to a community. Bob McCarroll, has this festival been instrumental in transforming that neighborhood? Has it been successful over these last 50 years?
Well, certainly the neighborhood is relatively restored, so that has happened. I don't know to what degree. The festival, though, continues to put a focus on the neighborhood, and it sort of is the neighborhood's celebration to invite the rest of the region to come visit. And we've literally had exhibitors show up and say, I've never done a show in such a beautiful area.
I mean, that tracks with the list of people that you have coming in. Some of them have been coming for 20 years from your exhibitor list. You've had people coming in for decades, 20, 19, 18 years. It's really great.
Great. We have a high return rate. And one of the things that gives me extreme pleasure is the number of exhibitors who say this is the favorite festival that they do. So we must be doing something right. They love the area. the neighbors are all out volunteering, so they get to see the neighbors and they help them. They like the fact that we have strolling, subtle music. We provide snacks for them, and so it's more than simply a show where you pay your registration fee and set up your canopy.
Do all three of you, and we're speaking with Bob McCarroll and Freya Bromwich and Jason Alves, do all three of you live in or around Mattoon Street? Is that what got you involved? Let's talk to Freya for a little bit there. Grab that microphone right in front of you. Swing that right in front of your face there, Freya. You have to talk real close to it or else we won't be able to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Even closer.
Even closer.
There we
All right. How's this?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So my husband and I moved into the neighborhood in 2018. And, from then on, we learned about the festival and, of course, wanted to be a part of it. And we've been a part of it ever since then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And you specifically are director of bringing in food, and I saw the list of folks that you have coming in, and it's really varied. Like it's really lovely in that way. Like not every festival has as wide a range of stuff that like Mattoon Street is bringing in. What motivates you to make it as broad as possible, and where are you looking to get new folks coming in?
I'm a foodie.
Nice.
So, there have been attendees that have mentioned that it would be great to have a food vendor that's vegan, vegetarian oriented. And this is actually my first year participating on the food vendor committee. So with that said, I just did my research. I go to a lot of farmers markets. One in particular in East Hampton was where I found a lot of the food vendors that will be participating this year. So super psyched to have Wicked Whisk, who will be participating on Saturday, and Thai Chili Food Truck. Also met them at the East Hampton Farmers Market. They will be participating as well. And then, I should also mention that Wicked Whisk is vegan, vegetarian oriented. And then on Sunday, we have the famous Vegan Pizza Land, whose outpost right now, they kind of pop around, but their current outpost is behind the abandoned brewery. So they're going to be with us on Sunday, along with P. Froggy by Irita, and she specializes in Polish cuisine.
And for those who've been listening to the show, you may remember our interview with Uriona Kaktiranova, who lived in a church in Northampton as a refugee, tying into what we were talking about before. From Russia, she was about to be deported during the Trump administration and chose instead to live in sanctuary for 2 years. She then cobbled together a business out of that church in Northampton, making pierogies, which she now calls Pifrogi as her marketing name for her pierogies.
Her child calls them that.
Her child started it, and she makes amazing pierogies, and she'll be part of this 50th anniversary of the Mattoon Street Arts Festival, which is happening this Saturday and Sunday on Mattoon Street in downtown Springfield. Let's take another little break right here, and we'll talk more about the Mattoon Street Festival and more about the evolution of Springfield over the years and everyone's involvement here with Freya Bromwich, Bob McCarroll, and Jason Alves.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Khalees Smith.
This Saturday and Sunday on Mattoon Street in Springfield, right near the Springfield Museums, is the 50th anniversary of the Mattoon Street Arts Festival. Over 90 exhibitors, food vendors, strolling musicians, celebrating this neighborhood. True, Bob McCarroll, this is the longest running art fair in the region. That's what I read in one of the articles about the festival. I don't know if this is, we got to get the news department to verify whether this is true or not. But
That's what I say, that we have persevered and we're now the longest. No one has yet to correct me.
Okay, so listeners, the email is Bob. No, I'm just kidding. We would love to know if there's a longer art festival going than 50 years. Because, art doesn't have to be a competition. It's just
and
cool.
You can duke it out.
Yeah, you can have a fight.
With art.
Yeah.
And a paint fight.
Jason Alves, who reached out about this festival, and I think what's so cool that there is like a neighborhood that has an art festival that's been going on so long in the city of Springfield. What is it about that street and that neighborhood that is important and special to you who lives there and is a professor at Stick and, part of the community?
Well, as a professor at Stick and someone who enjoys fine dining, I do like walking around and walking to work and walking out for lunch, but and walking with my kids out to lunch. But the thing that makes Mattoon most special to me are our neighbors. That we all are buying in. We all care. We're there passionately. We stop by at each other's table as we're eating outside. No one, there's no ill will. You know, that once in a while, of course, you're going to run into rubs of personalities, but everyone's in it together. There's a commonality. There's a common focus. We're trying to make this neighborhood that we love work. And same thing goes towards the festival. So
We know Freya's only been in the neighborhood for a few years. How long have you been there, Jason?
I was just wondering that when she said that. I think 15 to 16 years.
Oh, cool.
And how have you seen the neighborhood and or the city of Springfield change in that time?
It is always fun with Springfield. People come, people go. I was born in Springfield. I grew up on 16 acres. I moved downtown in the early 2000s, and I moved to Mattoon Street in the late 2000s or mid 2000s. And since that time, again, fads and this is the thing, and the panaceas come and go, casinos and all that stuff. What makes Springfield work are the people and the people who are invested in the city and the neighborhoods that keep it together.
How has the festival changed over the course of these 50 years? Have you seen certain things evolve and like come to the fore?
The festival, when it first started, was only a one-day festival. I don't know when it expanded to 2 days. I've been coordinating the festival since 1996. So this is my 27th and a half festival. I say a half because there was the 2020 festival that I spent 6 months on only to have it canceled because of COVID.
We're not going to count that against you, Bob.
No.
So at one point it was a one-day festival. It was fairly local artists, meaning from basically Springfield area. And it has fluctuated in size over the years. In the mid-'90s, we had actually shrunk. And now we're at capacity. The neighborhood association has decided that we don't feel the need to go past Mattoon Street, and so we can accommodate about 100 exhibitors on the street.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool to max that out and still have this kind of real community event that doesn't need to get any bigger.
That is so big for that. I mean, 100 vendors is a lot.
Yeah.
like that's a lot of things to see and do, right? Are there connections since it's so close to the museum? Do people like wander and go see things and then come back and like? Does it engender a lot of conversation about the art itself and trying to incorporate that into the neighborhood?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there is some synergy with going to the museums. The other thing where there's probably synergy is we're normally the same weekend as the Glendy Festival, so people will come to Mattoon Street for a couple hours and then they'll go to the Greek Festival, which is like 10 blocks away. So that kind of synergy
You get your steps
is a good
in.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and Greek Festival, we want to talk to you too. We've been talking about this off the air a lot. It seems like that's a really fun festival.
Especially because I keep trying to figure out what Glendy actually means, or it seems to just mean party.
Don't know.
We're asking the wrong people. These are the Mattoon people. They know about Mattoon Street.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but what I love about this is that it's a neighborhood festival. It's not an ethnic festival. Not that there's anything wrong with having a Greek festival, but it's really about community, no matter who's in that community. People that have been doing the festival for years and years and people that are newer to the neighborhood or people that grew up their whole life in Springfield. It seems like it's going to be a blast. It's this Saturday and Sunday. Unless we get corrected by another art festival, as far as we know, the longest running art fair in the region for 50 years, the Mattoon Street Arts Festival this Saturday and Sunday. Thank you so much to the resident historian, Bob McCarroll, for telling us about this, Jason Alves for reaching out, and Freya Bromwich for finding the excellent food that's going to be part of this festival
I
this
have
weekend.
one extra, of course. To anybody who wants to answer, are there people coming back that you've seen before that you're really excited about, that you hope people like notice their particular like pop up, their particular tent, their particular art?
Yeah. I guess no one comes to mind. I mean, clearly we have exhibitors who've been with us for decades, and then we have people who are here for their first time. I sadly, as the organizer, I have to worry about where they're going to be put and how they get set up. I spend less time.
You get to enjoy
You got it. It's like giving your own party. You never get to enjoy your own party.
Well, we hope that you will get to this Saturday and Sunday, at least a little bit, Bob. The Mattoon Street Arts Festival on Mattoon Street, Saturday and Sunday. Before we run out of time here, we asked listeners about places that, unlike the Mattoon Street Art Festival that have been going on for 50 years, are gone, but not forgotten. And we got an email from Mike Clark. Why don't I do part one, Khalees? And then Mike Clark emailed and told us a bunch of things that he misses that are gone and not forgotten. Number one, the old Jack August Seafood Restaurant, where the vintage cellar currently resides above the bridge on Main Street in Northampton. It was a treasured family favorite reserved for special occasions, and as soon as you walked in, it smelled like melted butter. You also knew you were in for an awesome meal circa 1977-78. Oh, that pile of breaded scallops. Number two from Mike Clark.
Sandy's Chicken Kitchen in Florence, currently occupied by the Great Wall. Best pork lo mein within 50 miles, in his humble opinion. Back in the day, they made the best pizza, fried chicken, and grinders in Florence. People still talk about it if you ask around. He worked there back in the 80s. It was his first food service job, and he's made a decent career of it with that as his starting point.
Mike Clark's third gone but not forgotten suggestion is the old Hugo's down on Pleasant Street.
R.I.P. Hugo's. That was my neighborhood bar for years.
The best dive bar that ever existed, and I'll die on that hill, he says. That only closed in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I love the fact that the comedian Stephen Wright, that was his he lived in Northampton, and that was like his favorite Northampton hangout. Hugo's there. So too bad that one's gone. But
now
not
full of
forgotten. Yeah.
And somehow still a liquor license, but we don't want to have that
Northampton and
explained.
liquor license is hard to untie that knot, let's say.
Yeah.
We got another email about gone but not forgotten from Adam Brisbane. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Places that aren't around anymore that I miss. Tasty Top, East Hampton, another recent loss. Opa Opa in Southampton. The Khalees and I just gave each other an inaudible look. No more comment. The Calvin, which is, and Pearl Street, which both of those are a slight dig. They did not mention the Iron Horse, which, as you've been reading press, there may be another life for, which we've been trying to get the folks on to talk about that. They don't really want to have an extensive conversation about it as of yet.
Well, because, don't jinx it is the answer to that. Don't jinx it.
And then he said that pinball place in Greenfield I never got to go to. I think he must mean the pinball place in Turner's Falls.
Yes, and then also Hugo's, he seconds.
Yeah. Mystic Pinball is what it was called on Avenue A in Turner's. That was one of my favorite places. Only there for a hot minute, but I totally miss that place.
And frankly, if you've got another place that we haven't mentioned yet, we might get to, but let us know at thefab413@nepm.org. We're still collecting them. We might find some folks who were involved with some of those places and do something a little bit more in depth. Who knows?
And a shout out to Connecting Point, the former WGBY show that did an excellent segment about Gone But Not Forgotten for many years, and the producer there, Dave Frazier, as well as our director, Tony Dunn, who was involved in those projects, going and looking through the archives of what made places like, as Roxanne A. Pin from Roxy Pin Consulting, shameless plug, says, Mountain Park, 4 exclamation points. And it is because of Roxy Pin that we do what she says in the postscript. P.S. Stress that the email is thefab413
Please include the definite
at
article.
nepm.org. We'll get to some more of your gone but not forgottens. And again, it is still here and very much remembered. A thank you to the folks from the Mattoon Street Art Festival, which is happening this Saturday.
Wednesday on the fabulous 413, which is tomorrow, if I'm not
I know.
mistaken.
I've
The
already
holiday
made a
throws
bunch of
everything off.
Tuesday mistakes. Apologies to Phil, our engineer over there.
But we head to East Long Meadow to hang out at the Apple Place and talk with the folks running that spot about keeping apples alive in Western Mass.
Plus comedy with a cause. We'll talk with Tim Lovett and Kim DeShields, who are bringing comedy to the Academy of Music this weekend.
And gender-neutral pronouns with the word nerd.
Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster.
Musical thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, U2, MIA, Tony McAlpine, Linda Perry, and Taj Mahal.
Our director is Tony Factory Reset Dunn.
Our engineer is Betsy Burger King McRap Lankdo.
Bart left a laptop on the chair Rankin. Phil, sorry about your dates that I got mixed up. And Punk Rude Boy Dubé.
Congrats on surviving the format change, y'all. See you tomorrow.